time to shake off the gloom of winter for a lovely spring evening of wine, beer, and poetry. And joining me today is author Laine. So that does sound like fun. It's springtime here in St. Louis, and poetry sounds like the perfect way to spend an evening.
Yeah, it's great. Not enough people come out, and I think it's a great opportunity for more.
Yeah, so tell us, what is a poetry reading exactly? What could we expect?
Well, it's going to be a reading of myself and a couple other writers, poets around town. My friends, Dan Wright, Grace McGinnis will be at this one. And you come, admission is free. They will have wine and beer for sale. They're in a bookstore. It's a great atmosphere. Just come hang out, listen.
And how do you all choose which poems you're going to be reading?
It's really a case by case. I think we just go with, you know, this is one of my favorite, or...
So do you plan ahead of time, or you kind of look at the crowd and see?
It's mostly just winging it.
Okay.
It's really nothing set in stone.
Yeah. So, Denmark, you are a writer. You've got a book here, a big book that you've written among other books as well. How do you divide your time between writing books versus writing poetry? Where do you prefer to spend it?
Oh God, I prefer writing anytime.
To writing a book versus poetry?
Oh, between that, well, yeah. It's a toss-up at that point. They're both just kind of different animals.
Yeah, they are. That's why I'm curious how you approach the process. So for poetry, for example, where do you get your ideas? You know, some people write poetry from dreams they have or from their own experiences.
Right. Well, in terms of poetry, it's kind of like, the best way I've ever heard it described is if a madman is chasing you down the street with a knife, you don't stop and consider what your next move is. You just start running away, screaming. Poetry is the same way in that if this emotion or an event is coming right at you, you don't stop to consider. You just viscerally react. And poetry is, you're operating on the panic or the excitement or the sorrow or whatever it is, and on adrenaline, it's fight or flight or write.
Yeah, exactly. So what you're saying is the ideas really just flow once you allow that to happen, that process?
Yeah, you've got to be stimulated by something.
Okay, so where does Laine get those ideas and concepts? What excites you to write poetry? Or is there a particular poem maybe in your that you've written that you can talk about?
I don't know. I guess I really have a rich inner life and not a lot of a social life. Sometimes it comes from just being by yourself and being cooped up and wanting to say something. A lot of the times I go out with friends. I go to concerts. I go just making trouble, go to bars, wherever. Sometimes you need people just to like fuel that. You need events. You need things happening to you.
But I think your idea of being alone too. I think the best ideas sometimes come when we're alone in silence.
Yeah, sometimes you got to go out and you got to, you know, gather some social flailings, and then you bring it back to the cave.
Yeah.
And you let it germinate there.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so the poetry reading is going to be open to the public.
Right.
It's free, and there'll be 3 poets, and about how long does it last?
It could go, I would say, probably about an hour on the outside. I mean, but it could go all night. After it's over, you're welcome to hang out.
And are the 3 of you very different in terms of the way you write your poetry?
Yeah, that was actually something we gave some consideration to. We're each going to give you a very different flavor.
Nice. Very nice. All right. We're going to come back in just a minute and talk more about your novel. So don't turn that dial. We'll be back with more and more from Laine after this break.